It's the pilot's lounge.
Hello and welcome to the first ever Pilot's Lounge. You can see that I'm trying to figure out how to work this stuff. I have an earbud in hearing double the feed. Welcome to the very first Pilot's Lounge. My name's Michael Sharkey. I'm the CEO at Autopilot. With me, I'm joined by our head of product, Peter Sharkey, and our lead designer, Christian. If me and Pete look semi-identical, that's because we are. And today we're celebrating. So hang on, let me do this correctly. We're popping champagne because we did announce today Heads Up, which is a new automated yet personal, not feature VentureBeat channel to allow you to have better communication with your customers. So Pilot's Lounge as a show is designed each week to be a show to train you, our customers, and tell you about up-and-coming features. Pete and Christian will be regular guests talking about up-and-coming features we're working on, showing you things that you can beta in the near future as well for us. And we'll also be doing deep dive training. So later we'll be joined by our CMO, Guy Marion, who's going to talk to us about the research that we did going into Heads Up. And we'll also do a deep dive into how to use the product as well. But this morning I wanted to start off, or the afternoon I should say now, with a celebratory champagne because Heads Up is now in the market. And I wanted to talk to two of the people on our team that were instrumental in really making Heads Up happen and bringing it all to life. So up on your screen now is an example of a Heads Up message. These are personal in-context messages that you can add to Autopilot journeys. And there's two examples here. There's Heads Up on the mobile and Heads Up on the desktop as well that you can add. And these will adapt based on the device that you're looking at. There's a few different types of heads-up messages, and these are a great replacement or addition to emails in the journeys in Autopilot. And you set them up pretty much the same way as an email, which is up on the screen now. So you can go in and configure. All of these messages have to come from a team member, and you write in the message, put in personalization variables to make it highly personal, and you can configure it as well. And there's a few different types of messages, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But I think the most exciting part about Heads Up for me is that we looked at all of these different avenues. We looked at support agents who had live chat. We looked at product managers who had different ways of notifying their customers about up-and-coming features. But we felt like marketers, in terms of journey-based marketing, really had no channel. They had email. Everything was about email. And so we thought that we could do something really exciting here, and that's sort of how Heads Up began. And so to take it back to sort of day one when we started talking about Heads Up internally, we wanted to make sure that these messages weren't considered spam. And I think, Christian, this is something me and you, were incredibly scared about early on, which was that what if these people, just think these are annoying pop-ups, like all the subscribe pop-ups and annoying things we see time and time again on websites. Can you tell everyone that's listening sort of how we went about that process and specifically our early results, which were terrible? Like, they were absolutely shocking. I remember one day walking out of some user testing sessions being depressed about how bad these heads up messages were doing.
Yeah. I think like an important part of the design process.
While you do that, I'm going to try and pour champagne.
Yeah, no problem.
Safely.
Yeah, an important part of the design process for us was we started off with our initial concepts and we gathered feedback internally for those, and we kind of got our best foot forward and kind of went ahead with those and started user testing them. And I think what served us really well is that we were user testing in context to make sure that if someone was coming to the pricing page and they weren't a customer, would they be inclined to become a customer by seeing this? And so we started testing our initial result. And if you go and refresh that and show it on the screen.
So let me figure out how to actually do that. Let's go to that camera.
So if you refresh that.
Oh, wait, I'm actually covering it up. Hang on. We'll switch over here. And
that pops up. So that was our initial concept. And so based on the user testing that we ran, which was really worrying, no one even saw it, surprisingly, even with it animating in like that and popping in. So at that point, we went back to the drawing board and started testing other results. And so if you go to the second tab, Mike, you ought to see. So we went completely different, and we kind of made it very, very, it stands out a lot. People see it. And so that worked. People saw it. But it didn't work well because no one would be inclined to actually use it. It got their attention, but it wasn't serving the purpose. So then we started going back and designing more and more variations. And then if you go to this third one and give that a refresh. So then we decided maybe we don't need to show the entire message, and we just need to get them to see something and then hover over it, and then we can show the message.
By the way, I love that animation.
Yeah, it's nice. That worked, but again, it didn't work well. We didn't get great results because it wasn't personalized and people didn't understand it. Like, why is there a head hovering on the site? It got people to hover over it, but it didn't explain what it was before they hovered over it. So then if you open up another test, Mike, if you go there and you just click into one of the URLs, we can just grab it and go to test 5. So then we started experimenting with personalization. So if you give that a quick refresh, they'll be able to see. Give that a refresh, yeah. So then we started experimenting with putting part of the message there so that they can see, oh, hello, first name, and then they get an understanding of what it's about. And then if they hover over it, they get the message. So this worked really well, and this is where we started to kind of narrow down our design and get onto basically the winning track. And then if you go to Autopilot and go to the 7th version, we can see the message. Yeah. And this is very close to what the current one is now. We made some slight adjustments, but here now we have the speech bubble coming from the head, and we also have the one there which lets them know that there's new information for them to uncover. And so if you hover over that, that will pop out the message. And this got really, really good results. We were seeing things like, how could we improve this message? And users were saying, I thought it was very well done. It got my attention. It made me click through it. And after reading the 10% offer, I would be inclined to purchase. So this is where we kind of started to narrow it down and basically came up with Heads Up.
And so, Pete, you've been doing a lot of beta testing with Heads Up and a series of customers. There's been almost 100 customers in the beta. Can you tell us about some of the messages you've been seeing people create, and what are some of the great examples that you've seen, or what you like, or what you're most excited about?
I think, excuse me, the stuff I'm seeing the most is definitely using Heads Up to complement your current journeys. I'm seeing a lot of people add them to sites after a form submit or after an email send, basically just to check in with people and see if they got the message or took the action that you wanted them to from another communication, whether it be an SMS or an email. So I think that's definitely where I see Heads Up going. I mean, there'll be a lot of use cases where people can use it purely on its own, trigger, then Heads Up. But I think that the real magic of Heads Up comes in complementing your existing journeys. So if you've already got an email going out after a form submit, you also might want to have a Heads Up message as well. And that just sort of, it continues that communication, and it makes sure you're not missing opportunities to talk to people. Because the fact is, there's a lot of channels out there, and most of them are too noisy. I mean, email is definitely too noisy. And when you've got someone in the context that you want them, on a page, for example, that's the best place to talk to them. Like, if they're visiting your pricing page, they're interested right at that moment about your pricing. And if you can pop up a message in context that's personalized just for them, it's a great way to talk to people, and it's just not as noisy as some of the other channels out there. So yeah, that's definitely where I'm seeing the usage so far.
Yeah, I think one of the examples that I've been giving quite a bit is my fake Wine Time website in the. Sorry, I'm like burping because of the champagne. The Wine Time example that we gave in a beta webinar recently to the people that were using it early on, we were saying, hey, you go and download this catalog, and typically you send an email follow-up from maybe a sales rep or someone on your marketing team with the catalog information. The challenge that the modern marketer has, at least, is that you get busy, you get distracted, you then forget to check your email. It's like 10 p.m. at night, and you're like, oh, I remember signing up for that or downloading that, but now I don't care. It's completely out of context. And really, when you talk about the customer journey, it's like they've shown interest downloading this wine catalog. So what does the sales rep or what does the e-commerce merchant want? Well, they want you to take an action that leads to some revenue or leads to a continuation of that journey. So what really excited me, at least, was seeing that you could display this heads up message in the Wine Time example, which I'll show in a moment, where you say, hey, do you want to attend a wine tasting? So you have this extended conversation, and it's now introducing this, let's say, sales rep to you. And then if they call you like a few weeks later because you've shown even more interest or you've taken certain actions, all of a sudden you've seen their face, you know who they are, and you create this personal relationship with the company and with that person, which I thought was really neat.
I think that's the magic of it. I think that a lot of us associate things that pop up on sites with noise. And I think that because it's contextual, it knows what you've done, it knows your attributes. It might know, say, your company size. It might know the email. It knows the emails you've clicked on. We know the forms you've submitted. And then the message uses all that information to talk to you at the right time. Yeah. And one thing we really went out of our way during the development of this to do was to actually, whenever we had a decision to make about Heads Up, we actually were like, well, let's try and make the experience for our users in terms of tracking and usage as close to email as possible. So we still have full, beautiful email, I meant to say email reports, but we have reports just as detailed as email reports. So you can benchmark your open rate, your response rate, and then we have full activity feed items. So you can see who's viewing them, who's responding to them, who's opening them, which means that you've got full insight into these things. They're not just blind widgets. They're really interactive and personal.
Yeah, I would agree there. I think the uniqueness here is a lot of people might at first see Heads Up and think, well, this is something that just pops up on the site. I've seen chat widgets. I've seen all of these things. I think what's so unique about Heads Up is it truly knows where you are at in that customer journey. It knows what you've been doing. It knows that you're on the 32nd day of your trial, or that you've taken this activity in the app, or someone just spoke to you, or someone just updated a field about you in Salesforce if you're using a CRM attached. And the messages and experiences you can create are so unique. I know that we've been doing the whole using a piece of functionality which isn't actually even in the product yet, which I've leaked on the screen, this A/B splitter. And so Pete and I have been on Friday after maybe a drink, or maybe not a drink. Maybe you hadn't. I had been drinking maybe a little bit, a lot maybe. We're debating over what's the right time to show a heads up message, like when to show it after a certain event happens in our products. So was it like 30 seconds? Was it 60 seconds? Was it 10 minutes? Was it 10 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, basically the bet Mike and I are having is how quickly do we use and one of the heads up option is called reply back, and it actually allows the user to type a response to a message which gets sent by email or Slack. But basically the bet Mike and I are having is how quickly do we ask a new user for feedback on how they plan on using autopilot. My hypothesis is if we wait a bit longer, people might feel a bit more comfortable replying because it's not being thrown in their face quickly. Whereas Mike wants to talk to them, I think, a little sooner to get that off-the-cuff response. So,
who's winning at the moment?
No comment. But I am actually being proven wrong by our own reporting. But that's the joy of this stuff, and that's what marketers should be doing: is experimenting and testing and using the reports for all they're worth to make sure heads up's great, but you should be making sure it's getting the results you want.
When will our customers get their hands on A/B split?
You're the one holding it back.
Shut up. No one knows that at all. Christian, I thought it was worth touching quickly on the mobile experience that we've built, and also because I kind of want to do a humble brag, the Heads Up launch website and some of the work that went into that.
Yeah.
And talking about that mobile experience. I think I do have a screenshot here. By the way, we've heard some of you just reporting earlier that there was some volume issues, so hopefully they're now corrected. So in this example, this promotional shot, we see the mobile experience is a little bit different.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that that promotional shot's sort of covering the screen there a little bit. But can you talk through that experience? And maybe I can show it on the screen in a minute while you do that.
Yeah, sure. If you just reduce it down, it will pop up the mobile version. Yeah. And so if you pull it out and pull it in, you'll see that it will snap up. It doesn't really work too well on Ustream. Anyway, basically, for the mobile version, the way that we did that is we used media queries to basically save space, because if you're on a mobile and you pop open, for example, where we saw it impacting the most was on the reply back, because you've only got a certain amount of area to type. And so if you're on maybe like a mobile, like a 5, an iPhone 5, by it popping it out to the side and you seeing the head to the right, it's wasting a lot of screen space. And it's interesting, like when you're on desktops, horizontal screen space is not really an issue, but when you're on, vertical screen space is not really an issue, but when you're on mobiles, the other way around, horizontal screen space is the issue. And so that by putting that above the head and making it pop up over, we save space for the reply back.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about it is I go to a lot of websites where the subscribe box covers the entire mobile screen. Like I'll click through from a link referral or something like that, and the experience is so frustrating. Like I have honestly almost given up reading. And I know on Apple in Safari they have that little feature which makes the page more readable, but often in app they sort of link off to a web browser when you're seeing a referral link. And I think the whole mobile experience with advertising is broken. I mean, we saw when AdBlock was released on the iPhone that the adoption, I think it's still number one in the App Store. People hate ads on their mobile, but I thought what was really cool about Heads Up was that it doesn't feel annoying. Like it just sits at the bottom and it's there and you can get rid of it really quick, and it interacts with hand gestures.
You can also continue to use the website without having to do anything to it as well. Like if you hadn't opened that, then it sits in the bottom corner, and so it doesn't affect your experience while browsing, and you can open it that way. Another issue that we found, which was interesting when we were doing the reply back stuff, is iPhone has a lot of little kinks and things like that you've got to work around. And for example, one thing that was kind of getting to be an issue is when they clicked into the reply back to type a message back, if you're not using 16-point font for iPhone, it's going to zoom in, and by zooming in it's going to disrupt the experience and also kind of hide the button for you to actually reply back with. So it's little things like that that just make the experience a lot nicer.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool how the message sort of adapts, especially on the phone as well. The box gets bigger. It kind of feels like Facebook Messenger, which I thought was really cool as well.
Yeah.
So is that something that that you learn, like you kind of came off the bat being like, okay, this is what a heads up message will look like on the phone, as opposed to the desktop? Or is that something that you feel like you learned through this testing process?
No, I definitely learned it through the testing. I learned a lot of the stuff through the testing process. If you look at our initial concept, maybe you've got this screen there too, Mike, where it shows all the iterations we did. Do you have that?
I can bring it up. Just give me a minute here.
Okay, no problem. Like if you look at what we planned out to launch and what we ended up launching with, it's dramatically different. Like there's a lot of change that has happened, and a large part of that has been through user testing and prototyping, which has been really valuable for us. Because I think as well, like when you ask someone for feedback on a design, if they're looking at a design and they're not actually seeing it in context or seeing it move, it's hard for them to understand the full picture. And so I think that's been prototyping at every stage.
I think there's that many iterations of it.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot.
It's angry at me. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining me on the first half or quarter or however long it's been on Pilots Lounge. It was great.
Cheers.
I think we should cheers. Today's a good day for us. Thank you for joining me.
And thank you to all of our users who helped out during the beta as well. Your feedback's invaluable. We listened to every single comment. Yeah, really excited.
Yeah, it's great. And we'll be back again next week, Wednesday, 1 p.m. with these guys as well to talk about other things that are up and coming and some of the new releases that we put back in the product. Stick around. In 2 minutes, we're going to be joined by Guy Marion, our CMO, and maybe Annie, if I can convince her to come in here to talk about the research we did and also give you an in-depth look at Heads Up. All right, we're back on. I've got 2 new guests. I just get all the good guests on my show. So we're cracking another bottle. Woo! Celebration.
Nice.
Do you guys want to... Oh, shit, this one's being mean around electronics. This is not a good idea. Let me just pour this
All right.
out. So, Guy, while I'm pouring champagne, I did promise our pilot loungers that you would talk about the research that we did. Just briefly, I know we're going to cover this next week in another webinar, but I'd love to hear sort of, we came up with this sort of thesis of what, these messages could be. And then really, I think we wanted to talk to consumers for the first time because we always survey marketers, but consumers were a lot more interesting to us. So do you want to...
Sure.
Is that a good segue?
That was an excellent segue. First of all, we're excited about launching Heads Up today. It is a new channel that allows marketers to send personalized messages to the audience where it matters most, so in-app and on-site, and doing so within the context of the customer's journey. So one of the questions we had is, we knew from experience and from other services that we've used that being able to message on-site is a critical aspect of being able to engage in the right way at the right time. But what did consumers think? And as we get increasingly personal in how we interact with customers, is that something that people really want? So the short of it is that we did a survey using the SurveyMonkey Audiences product. Strongly recommend that. Reached out to 1,200 different consumers across the United States. And we learned a couple of things. First of all, 72% of the respondees said that they're turned off by generic marketing. So, consumer expectations really are changing. Only 20% of people felt like they'd be turned off by having access to browsing history or past behavior in how you engage your customers. So it really does come down to people expect us now to engage. And, when it comes to right place, right way, right time, which is something everyone talks about, what we learned is actually number one most important factor when people engage with the company. 65% of people said responding in a timely manner at the right time was the number one most important factor with how they want to be engaging with the company. The number two thing was they want to see expert knowledge be demonstrated when they interact. So not just contributing to the noise of the broader internet, but leveraging core competencies, original research, product insights to be able to deliver a personalized message that's actually different. And then third is actually using personalization in your messaging. And that means not just, adding dynamic fields with content, but actually in the right way as well. So we're now going to say it's the right time, the right message, and the right way.
That's awesome. I'm burping again. This is so embarrassing. I know that, you do a lot of great work on our blog and across all of our content. And we've been using heads-up messages to sort of help us out, referring people to different content. Can you tell us a little bit about that and anything else that you like about Heads Up?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about Heads Up is it allows you to connect with your customers while they're actively engaged with you. When they're browsing your website or they're, in your app trying to accomplish some task or searching in your knowledge base for a specific support article, you can kind of send them a message and gently nudge them in the right direction versus, if you send an email that's kind of out of context and then they kind of receive it 3 hours later, it's not really at the optimal time. They might be, home cooking dinner with their families or something. So I really like the timeliness of heads up messaging and also the fact that every single heads up message has someone's headshot, someone that they would ideally recognize from your team and see, that person's name and title, and it allows marketers to build relationships with their customers, but do so in a way that's at scale. I know a lot of marketing teams don't have time to kind of be doing live chat, speaking with people who are coming onto their website all day long, but Heads Up allows you to, still be able to communicate, but in a way that's scalable.
Yeah, I think that's something that really appeals to me as well, because you want to have that ability to have personal touches with people and feel like you've really thought through the experience. And I don't necessarily think that means you need to throw people at the problem, and I don't think people expect you to do that. What I think is really exciting is, in the customers at least I've seen implemented it, it's really timely, useful, knowledgeable information, which goes back to that research, and that seems to be what's most effective. I know one of our customers uses it to engage people after they've signed up to a product, and to nudge them towards this training webinar, which is really popular. So, and I mean, obviously we used it for Pilots Lounge today, and it worked incredibly well.
One point I'd make as well is another thing we learned in that research, and we know this from working with many of our customers as well as how we use it internally, is email still is the number one most preferred channel by consumers to be reached. It's the most effective and drives the highest ROI for marketers for a lot of things. It's also the channel that's most likely to be personalized, according to recent research by VentureBeat. So they found that 80% of emails are actually personalized by senders nowadays, whether that's by targeting and segmentation or whether that's through sort of content insertion. What Autopilot's now doing is allowing you to send an in-app message or display a message in the right context as easily as saying an email, and being able to do that in the context of, like we talked about, a free trial. On the second day of your trial, let's say somebody has not yet published their journey for the first time, or added a contact into your database, or done one of the many things, with Autopilot, with this customer journey concept. What are the actions you want people to achieve by day 2? And then you send an email which can reinforce them if it's not the appropriate time for them to be seeing an app. And you can also deliver a message that's either in application or somewhere else on the site as well. So that's probably where we've seen initially uptake from customers who've immediately changed the way they think about engaging customers once they have Heads Up, is that sort of in-app experience for the first onboarding period. But other interesting use case we've been seeing is content recommendations. Someone finishes reading an article. They're interested in seeing, thanks for reading my blog post, would you like to read this one as well? Or registering for upcoming events.
Cool. So I think I wanted to quickly jump into a demo just a really brief demo here, because we've been talking about Heads Up a lot, but we haven't actually sort of shown you how it works here. So what I'll do is I'll clear out this journey and we'll have a look. So I mentioned earlier when Pete and Christian were in here about this concept of wine time. You know, you fill in a catalog on the site and someone might call you, or you might get an email, and then the email can fall out of context, like Annie just said a lot better than I have. And so in the canvas here, we have the triggers, actions, and conditions, which most of you watching, I'm sure, are really familiar with. So the form submitted trigger is what we'll use to start the journey for wine time. And it's very appropriate because I'm drinking champagne and it's going to my head as I demo. And so the typical process sort of looks like this. You know, they submit a form, you send an email saying, hey, you know, thanks. And then maybe you go and, like, if you're using a CRM, assign the lead, add a task. And so you sort of start to build out this relatively simple customer journey behind it. And then over time, you might change the journey based on how they're responding to the email, drive them towards a call to action. But mostly you will rely on email. The exciting thing about Heads Up is that you can supplement this with a message. Now, this is a really basic example. I think most of the examples we've seen in the beta have really been, you know, a lot further along in the journey. So I think we're sort of cheating a little bit here. And then let's go and just jump straight in and configure that message up. So I'm going to use the call to action type. As we said earlier, there's 3 types we're launching today: call to action, reply back, and subscribe. So we'll call this wine tasting. I can't really spell. And we'll say deploy it on any page, but you can select specific pages as well. And that's really a part of that whole context piece, showing people where, you know, the right message in the right place. And that's really important. So you could do a message and deploy it to, say, your help desk or your website, or even your in your app on a specific page if you've released a new feature, for example. So like Annie said, you can pick different people on your team. So I've got Chris and me sort of on this team here. So I can say hi using our personalization variable, Michael, you know, like, thanks for downloading our catalog. Would you like to attend a free wine tasting with the team at? And then you can throw in their company name just so it's even more personalized. And you'll see the preview build out on the left-hand side here as well. And then the button text will say attend the tasting. Hit continue, and I'm just going to put in a generic URL for now because I'm a little bit unprepared and don't have my wine tasting scheduling page URL ready. We'll hit continue here. We can see a preview of the message, and that's it. We can tap publish, and it's good to go. So it's really easy to set up a heads up message. And if I go in and just select an example email here, you can see it's essentially the same thing, all in the canvas, all giving you the ability to visually edit. I'll just go and configure out these steps, put some junk in here. And then finally, we'll configure the form. So we just take the URL of where that catalog form is here and paste it in. We'll call the form catalog. And this is just using the autopilot form capture process that I'm sure some of you listening are already pretty familiar with. It's just capturing the structure of that form on the page so it can capture the leads into the database. Now, keeping in mind, I've already got the tracking code on my Wine Time website, and that tracking code allows you to not only capture the form, but also deploy the heads up message here as well. So that's it. Our journey's ready to go. We'll tap publish. It'll publish out. And then back on the dashboard, we'll be able to sort of watch this play out in real time. So let's go ahead and refresh this page. You'll see those notifications coming through in the dashboard already. And then I'll just fill it in. I feel like one of you should like sing.
Short key.
I actually spelled my name right.
You got it right.
Wow. This is a first. So we'll hit get the catalog. My Squarespace website isn't that remarkable. It just says, thanks, your catalog is on the way, which is not incredibly exciting. And then you can see this form submit come through. I can click in, see my brilliant profile, and see that I just entered the journey here that we were able to create. And then if I go back to the website, and imagine I'm continuing browsing around, downloaded the catalog. I'm really interested. Here we go. So, hi, Michael. Thanks for downloading our catalog. It's completely in context. Would I like to attend a free wine tasting with the team at Autopilot? Why, thank you. I would like to attend a free wine tasting. We're actually doing that right now. So that's a really quick demo of Heads Up there for you. And that's the call to action specifically. So, Guy, I thought on that note, now the people have seen how Heads Up works, it would be really cool to talk about some of the use cases that we're doing internally and also some of the use cases that we've got up on the website as well.
Yeah. We have dogs in the office, by the way.
The dogs. I don't even know if they can hear it, but there's our loud, vicious Chihuahua hounds outside.
I mean, just looking at that demo, and we internally use Autopilot every single day, but when you take a step back and look at it from the different use cases and you look at what you just did, I mean, you still have gone to a brand new site, you've added a tracking code, you've captured someone's information who's just filled out a form, whatever that form might be, you've sent an email, you've added a Salesforce lead and assigned it to a rep, and you've shown a message that engages them. And that's an incredibly powerful set of actions that you've taken in a very short period of time. And it's pretty amazing the types of use cases we're seeing. I'm fortunate I get to talk to a lot of customers and see how they're using it. And so we're initially recommending and have observed several different use cases, and those are what we're taking internally. One is, we have Flight School, which is a big part of Autopilot's current and future. We're using it as a platform for online community development, training, sharing best practices, and we have methodologies on there, which we call flight plans. And so one thing we've done is when someone's completed a methodology, which captures sort of the sum of what we know internally, then we actually recommend them to go and see an associated recorded webinar, of which we've done quite a few. So we're seeing a lot of uptake there and a lot of high click-through rates, or response rates, as we call them, with Heads Up, to go into the associated content. We do the same on our blog as well. So on our blog posts, we'll have authors either internal or contributed, and if people like certain blog posts, we recommend they go to similar blog posts, and we're seeing sort of strong engagement within both blog and Flight School for driving people to our top performing content. A third thing that we've been doing is, as we've mentioned a couple times now, is in application, we're welcoming users in. To speak to you, Mike. So this is kind of a weird small circle right now. But, I was previously at Zendesk. We spent a lot of time testing out different ways to engage people during trials. And one thing we've learned is sending people to group demos is a fantastic way at scale to be able to offer a personalized experience for large numbers of customers, even if you have small internal teams relatively. It turns out that if you do it from the founder and the CEO of a company, or from a head of product or an internal expert, those engagement rates get even higher. So we're testing out different approaches right now onto when we invite people into the group demos and how we do so, as you were joking about earlier. We're also doing like the nudges and the tips. We also call those recommendations. So if, for example, by day 7 of a trial, somebody hasn't achieved something, then we're actually recommending them. Well, actually, I'm going to speak for a second I'm not going to take the thunder away, but we're doing a webinar this time next week with one of our customers, and he's doing some really interesting things with using Heads Up first as a way to
bachelorette of the bachelor. Was it bachelor?
New Zealand's most eligible bachelor.
This is New Zealand's most eligible bachelor. I hope, Zach, sorry if you're listening.
Zach, if you're
Whoops.
Sorry about this. He's doing some really interesting. He's doing some brilliant work actually in his onboarding. It's a health IT service, and they have large numbers of people signing up. And he's actually offering ways for people to reduce the number of emails they receive through offering a combination of Heads Up in response to how they have or have not implemented their product early on. And it's these sort of like innovative approaches that are allowing us to increase our signal, reduce the noise across multiple channels in a way that's highly coordinated, and is getting people into enabling them faster, making it more self-service, making them more successful, which in turn drives them onto being long-term customers.
Excellent. I was kind of blown away. So
we're trying all these, and one thing we're going to be doing more of in the future is requesting engagement from customers to share with us what you're doing. We just hired someone new internally to help us with building out best practices content. We intend to do lots of lab experiments. We call them flight simulators where we're going to ask people to share data. They can scrub out like the real numbers if they want, but would love to get insights into, whether it's in trial or reactivation or engagement or stitching together your go-to meeting or your Eventbrite events, like the tips and tricks that are working and making that be something that we can share and collectively as a community become better at how we engage customers, don't do generic marketing, and do be more personalized at scale.
I think what really blew me away was when we were talking to journalists and they said, hey, what data are you seeing from the beta program, at least on conversion rates, open rates, things that Pete was talking about that we've closely aligned to email for comparative reasons. And while not necessarily the people that see the messages is as high as if you just blast everyone with a message. What's really interesting is because it's such a highly relevant, highly targeted message, the open rates we've seen are like 80%. So it's like highly relevant message. Everyone's opening it pretty much. And then you're getting that click-through rate or engagement rate of something like 40% through our beta shots, which is insane. Like, I mean, if you think about it, you're an e-commerce site and there's a company I know quite well who, based on the pet food you buy, so if you buy like puppy food, they know that you have a puppy, so there's other things that puppies need. And so using Heads Up now, they can nudge you instead of sending an email after the fact saying, hey, do you need puppy Halloween costumes, which me and my wife are searching for. It's a hard, long search. And so
these are San Francisco problems.
Yeah, these are definitely San Francisco problems. And so I think what really excites me about that is that it's this in-context message. So you've bought something, it's like, hey, why don't you do this? It's someone you get to know at that company. The emails are coming from them as well. That personal relationship, you sort of start to feel like you have a personal relationship with a vendor like you did a butcher, baker, or candlestick maker in the past, which is really cool.
A butcher, baker, or candlestick maker.
Do candlestick makers still exist?
They do. They do. In fact, we have... no, we don't.
You don't want to say that. This is another San Francisco thing.
It's interesting because some years ago, actually, the founder of Zapier, Wade Foster, is somebody who came and gave a presentation at my last company and talked about how he uses these extremely segmented emails to significantly increase the open rates of customers during their trial period. And I remember it aligned nicely with what we've been finding, which is, segment users based on behavior at certain points. And you can go from having these very low open rates to very high open rates and click rates. And I feel like we're seeing a similar sort of order of magnitude shift now with Heads Up and in-app messaging where, instead of thinking about, I get more than 5% click rates on a highly time-intensive campaign that I'm running, suddenly we're talking like 41%. As being the average of all beta testing response rates that we've seen so far in Heads Up in the last month. So, those kind of numbers are substantially higher and gives us another way to continue to boost up that engagement with customers.
Cool. Well, I think that sort of brings us to our 45-minute allotment here. Any final comments? Anything else? I do want to cheers everyone at the end, but anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just really excited to start experimenting with Heads Up. It's a channel that wasn't available to marketers prior to this. And I think, we're going to learn a lot as we start to adopt it internally and start to see, if engagement falls, if we are using Heads Up too much, and then it kind of becomes overused or also annoying, or if we don't use it enough. So it's just kind of, I think there's a lot of room for experimentation and kind of setting the benchmarks for a channel like this. Yeah,
it's really exciting. I think this is truly just the beginning, and obviously we have a lot more plans, which give me one more champagne, I'd probably tell everyone right now about exactly what we're doing, but thankfully I'm restricted. But so it's awesome. So cheers, guys, to the launch of Heads Up. It's really exciting. Cheers. And thank you, everyone that tuned in. This has been a crazy experiment with some insane amount of technology set up, which I didn't think we'd be able to bring together in time. But we've done it. And so Pilot's Lounge will be continuing every Wednesday. This is US time. I know we have a lot of international viewers as well. So Wednesday US time, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Coast. something time. I don't know if it's daylight saving now, so it's like PST
Barely.
something.
We don't
or
have much
other.
longer.
Just basically like Californian time would be a good thing to set your clocks to. So 1 p.m. every Wednesday. We'll also be recording these, putting them up on YouTube and Flight School as well. Next week, we are going to have some interviews with customers, start to look at people's journeys and go in-depth with customers, what they're doing, give you tips and tricks for growth, and also do an in-depth session training in different aspects of autopilot every week. So we look forward to you either joining or tuning in after the recording then. Thanks so much for joining us on the First Pilots Lounge.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Pilot.